All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another CIDDL office hours. We're really excited to have you today. Today, the topic is kind of a casual conversation of the end of the year and AI, the end of the semester and AI. What's working, what's not working, what can we talk about? What resources can we discuss that we love or some that we used and had a hard time with and would like to talk about a little bit more with a group? Um, so welcome and we'll get the conversation going. So go ahead, Jamie.
Well, I was just going to say, hey, everyone, welcome back. This has been an ongoing dialogue for us, obviously, during the AI office hours for things that we've been using and things that have kind of worked and not worked and that we've been successful with. I'm going to go back to my old favorite that we've shared here multiple times in this in our chats here, but that creating those customized and kind of customized GPTs has been really helpful for us. I can share my screen, I guess, but this is old news if you've been to these before. In fact, we just did this on it. It's uh, high leverage GPT that I created for an undergraduate class that I've been teaching. Was very useful this semester. Again, we'll put the chat in the window. And it's here. But it's been great because we're able to then develop case studies, et cetera, out of it. And then generally, again, this is what the topic of last year, a couple weeks ago, our office hours, the idea of being able to create our own little chatbots for doing and supporting the instruction in the class. And if you missed that last office hours where we talked about that, Matt and I talked about how to build these last time. These have been extremely successful, but I want to let other people kind of go in and talk about different experiences we had. I know like one of the things we did this year in the same undergraduate class was actually take a lot of time to think about how to design a midterm case study as a midterm assignment that encouraged the students to utilize AI while at the same time also made sure the human element was embedded in that. And so, Yaron, you were kind of the lead teaching assistant on helping design that. You want to talk about what kind of went into that?
Sure, let me share the screen of mine. Give me a moment, please. So, so here is the midterm exam we designed for the same class, the Intro to Special Education. So we baseline AI as a tool for collaboration rather than a tool for cheating and stuff. So we talked about how AI is changing our world and society and the landscape of education. We talked about AI literacy and prompt engineering. And we designed a case study so teachers, like pre-service teachers, can think about and integrate what we all learned during the class. So they chose one case study and which involved students with disabilities, and they had to integrate some historical and legal understanding of disabilities, such as IDEA or all the legal foundations that we learned in the course. And they had to think about research-based practices that we learned in the course, such as HLP, UDL framework, or like MTSS and such. So we kind of incentivized to look over the course material that we went through during the class. And then we explicitly asked them to collaborate with an AI to create an AI prompt to develop step-by-step solutions to support the student in the case studies. So and they had to justify why they used that kind of prompts based on the prompt engineering skills and what they learned about the environment of the students and what we learned in the class. And yes, and based on what they got from AI output, they critically evaluated the task, as you can see here, refine AI response and finalize step-by-step solution, and also submitted link or the copy and paste to AI chat history. And they had to go through all the reflection process during the video so they know what they're talking about. So here's a brief information about the midterm assignment. Jamie, do you want to add anything or is
Yeah,
there
I
any
mean, I think,
questions?
one of the, and I remember designing this, as we sat and designed this, we really thought about it for a few weeks on kind of what are the actions we want students to take. And we really thought about that interaction with the AI. And I think as our colleagues here and across the country, think about the use of AI, we want obviously to model this notion of collaborating with AI in a way that's useful for student learning, but also think about the types of interactions we want them to take, while also knowing that if students want to take a shortcut, they can. So how do we kind of usurp the shortcut in some ways and make them kind of challenge them to use it in a positive way? So I think the midterm was a perfect example. We can share out for people that want to see those directions or whatever. We can kind of share out the URL for this little midterm for people. So,
That would
but what are other,
that would be great because one of the questions was how can AI help foster honest student work and design
yeah,
strategies to use AI tools responsibly, for them to rely on them rather than inappropriately. So that would be a great resource for that question.
yeah, and I think this, we tried to do it and it seemed to work. And then obviously we had the students reflect on it after they took the midterm as well.
Great.
So what are some other ways, Matt? I know you've been very active in using AI in your classes and the community here. You guys are on watching this. Feel free to reflect on your year of using or not using or fighting with AI if you needed to, I guess.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting, Jamie, to think about the notion of teaching in 5 years, right? Because right now, if you look at the way teachers, at least in Florida, who I see, are using AI, I would say that they're still very hesitant to integrating technology into their classrooms. And I think it's incredibly powerful. One of the key pieces that I think they need to do, though, is to use it from a critical lens so that they're asking the students to evaluate the process that AI is going through when it's doing, say, a compare and contrast essay. Have you done anything like that with your students?
We haven't really done a compare and contrast essay. So do you want to talk more about, did you guys do that?
Well, I was out in a school the other day and they were doing compare and contrast essays, and one of the students in the class asked AI to do it. And it was interesting because AI is actually blocked on their computers, but the student went over and used their phone to hotspot to it and came up with some really interesting points. And the teacher did a nice job pivoting and saying, well, if you're saying these things are compare and contrast moments, what do you think is the logic behind the inferential learning that you're doing when you look at those from AI? And so I thought that was a really interesting perspective. And she challenged the kids. Now, inferential learning was one of their vocabulary words. And so I thought that was a very astute way to pivot, even after the student had broken the school rules to get to the AI.
Yeah, that's actually kind of an interesting one. I think we're going to start seeing, I mean, we're on obviously in this new frontier, if you will, with AI. And I think we're going to just see lots of types of uses and new novel ways to use it. And, this is going to continually increase over time. Cheryl had a good question.
Oh, you
And
muted.
I think Teddy somewhat answered Cheryl's question. But again, if you were here a couple weeks ago, Matt and I demonstrated how to create and customize the little GPTs. So I used ideation specialist GPT for my class. And so to kind of, we've talked about this, it seems like quite a bit over the last couple months in this channel, um, but what we did is essentially gave the chat GTP We trained it on our syllabi. We told it the population of students that we are educating. So in my case, they generally happen to be freshmen, sophomores, and juniors. Um, and with the goal of that they're pre-service teachers. And so we kind of filled it with some information, and then as we were going through the class, we kind of walked it through. Here's what we're working on this week. Can you generate case studies? And I could tell you, and I know Matt's done this because Matt and I've known each other for way too long. I think I had hair when I met Matt. Um, but but case studies take a ton of time to develop. Anyone that develops really good case studies for their class, it takes a ton of time. And these GPTs, the idea uh, uh, of a large language model developing a case study really helps out in developing that. So we've had a lot of great experiences in that.
So one of the questions again that you kind of talked about but came up was what are examples that you've seen where AI actually promoted deeper learning or accountability? And I think Matt, you kind of just shared out that example of the compare and contrast in one of the classrooms that you saw. But does anyone else have any examples that they've used this semester that they want to share out, or anything that your pre-service teachers have really enjoyed that maybe we can utilize in summer courses or fall courses next year?
I'll do the appropriate way, but I'll just say that what we've tried to do in that midterm is, if you've looked at that midterm that we just showed, is we've had the students really do that deeper learning in the midterm itself. So not only as they answer the case study, but they go through and answer the case study as normal, but then reflect on how it worked out for you. How did your how did your prompting of the AI really support the answer? What sort of things are you needing to go into this? And so we had the students reflect. And by the way, for those who may have not seen this on the midterm, we had people video that. So we had the students video themselves doing that. So it required the students to either video themselves doing it and showing us how they actually did it, which is creating that sort of meta level reflection. Uh, or they had to create a very sophisticated AI to mimic themselves, which I'm sure they didn't. But so we really did think about what are the user interactions that are going to need to take place to actually bring forth that higher order thinking, et cetera.
And Cheryl,
That's a good point, Jamie. So I know with some of my students this semester, we did a similar thing where they had to come up with a video to demonstrate their understanding of a specific task. In the case of this class, it was a mock IEP meeting that they had to run with parents, right? But the issue I ran into is that several of the students were just coming up with the dialogue and reading it off the screen, and you could see them, they were recording it on Zoom, but you can see their eyes moving on this screen over here. And I thought, well, that kind of defeated the point, right? We wanted them to have to be natural and have this correspondence with parents, and everything was scripted. And so I think that takes away from the authenticity of what they're actually thinking, right?
Yeah, I think so for sure. In fact, down the hall, Lisa Deeker, colleague of ours, does some phenomenal work in simulation. And I think right now some of the simulation is doing through interactors, but simulation can now, and she has some simulations running through AI. And I think as these things get more sophisticated, being able to put students, pre-service educators in a realistic IEP meeting or a realistic classroom,
Yeah.
these are all things that I don't think they're too far down the horizon. I think we're really going to have to think about how to actually do this, and then really define kind of what do we want the humans to really do in this sort of scenario. I think that's a critically important sort of piece.
Yeah, and I think we want to do that without scaring off our future teachers,
Most
because
definitely.
I know you and I have been in meetings before that would be pretty intimidating for a new person to be in.
This is
And
true.
I think what we need to do is like have a dial so we can dial it back a little bit for those early on people.
This is true. We actually had, as I reflect on the semester, we're in finals week right now here at KU. As I reflect on the semester, some of the students kind of presented their project, their write-up and everything's not due and until this week, but they presented their project. And so in that undergraduate class again, in that undergraduate class, I had the students, kind of go out and do a little documentary style thing of what's going on in classrooms and interview people, etc. And a number of the students actually asked questions about the use of AI. And one in particular last week, I was reminded that she kind of said, well, these teachers, the teachers I interviewed really think it's going to be useful, but don't know how to use it yet. And we said, and so I think that's going to be something that we're seeing too, that really where the pre-service educators are coming in, maybe knowing a little bit more initially and helping the in-service educators that maybe don't know as much how to use it effectively. Hopefully, if the pre-service educators are getting prepared to use AI, which is I think a big question right now, because I think it's a huge issue for the field.
One thing I'd like to note is like even not in the video but just seeing the process of all the students have done because we gave step-by-step guidance on how to do the midterm and we asked them to elaborate all the processes. We could tell that those who put a lot of time and effort were already being very like discreet about what kind of prompts they're going to put in, think about all the factors that they want to consider. And like those who just want to use AI as a shortcut, just like copied and pasted our instruction as prompts and just like came up with all the AI output stuff. So I think if we highlight some kind of process, like in video form or written form, it'll easy to tell for teachers to notice like how much effort they put into it.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think so. I know so what we usually try and do is have just a few minutes of discussion and show and tell, but what are other people's reflections or questions that they have? This is open AI office, or this is open office hours for AI, not open AI office hours. What are some questions that people have and or reflections maybe from this academic year they want to share?
Mhm.
All right. Jenny said, I'm currently a special education regional technical assistance provider and a doctoral student. I'm trying to help bridge the gap for current practitioners by infusing AI related content into trainings. Thank you for the high quality resources. Thank you for coming, Jenny. We appreciate you joining us. And if there's ever a question or anything that we can help you with outside of these office hours, I always want to promote our CIDDL community. If you're not a member, please join. We can continue conversations there. We will add the link in the chat. If you leave today and you decide, oh, I wish I had asked a certain question or reached out to Matt about this or Jamie about that, go to the community and we will get those questions answered and the conversation started.
Yeah, I'll say too, since we released the framework a couple weeks ago,
Yeah.
we've had a lot of good conversation and traffic around the framework. And if people have not seen that, I just put that link in the window, but I'll show it to you again. And we're planning to develop, let me back up there a little bit. That was too fast. But on the CIDDL website, we have a framework for responsible AI integration in PK-20 education for all students, including students with disabilities. It's available here for download. Simply download it and it'll take you through. So as districts right now, and I can imagine people like Jenny who are supporting regional technical assistance. Like, what are we doing this summer? What are we planning for in the upcoming year? AI integration is going to be a major piece of the conversation. It's been a major piece of the conversation for a while, but ever since we released this framework here a couple weeks ago, it's kind of brought in more conversation. So we would encourage people to use this framework and ask questions. And as Angelica said, we're attempting to be here for everyone. So go into the community, reach out, email us, do what you need to do to support what you do for your work.
And we're really hoping to have conversation in the community or on our social media about what you need this summer to prepare for next year. These office hours are kind of based off the topics that you reach out to us about or talk about while we're in the office hour. That's what guides us for our next topic. So if there's something that we haven't hit yet in this school year, please let us know throughout the summer. We will continue these and into the start of the fall. Thanks so much for joining us today.